Ford Pinto.
This Pinto got me very interested into autocross, auto racing, just cars in general.
Few names in American automotive history trigger quite as many raised eyebrows as the Ford Pinto. For most people, the Pinto is remembered as a budget commuter car, practical, affordable, and tragically infamous for its safety issues. But beneath that troubled legacy lies a nearly forgotten chapter. A brief moment when the Pinto wasn't just competing with its fellow economy cars. It was actually threatening European sports car royalty. This is the story of how a humble Pinto, with the help of a visionary car dealer and a turbocharger, dared to challenge the Porsche 914. A story of innovation, ambition, and what happens when someone decides to rewrite the rules. A Pinto with a purpose. The year was 1970. America was facing a new kind of automotive competition, not from Detroit's traditional rivals, but from overseas. Japanese imports like the Toyota Corolla and Datsun 510 were flooding the market with fuel-efficient, low-cost alternatives. Ford needed an answer, and fast. Enter the Pinto. It was designed to be light, cheap, and straightforward. A subcompact sold for just under $2,000. You could get it as a two-door sedan, a three-door hatchback, or a wagon. The engines were modest, a 1.6-liter or a 2.0-liter inline-4, just enough to get you to work and back. It wasn't exciting, it wasn't fast, but it filled a growing need, and for a brief moment, it sold well. What no one expected was that this unremarkable commuter car would soon become the foundation for one of the most surprising performance cars of the decade. Meanwhile, in Germany, while Ford was building simple transportation, Porsche was doing what Porsche does best, building legends. The 911 was already a household name, but in the early 70s, Porsche introduced a more affordable option, the mid-engine 914. It came with a 1.7-liter or 2.0-liter flat-4 engine. For those with deeper pockets, the 914/6 used a 2.0-liter flat-6 pulled straight from the 911T. These weren't supercars, but they were sports cars through and through, nimble, responsive, and built for enthusiasts. At the time, even the base 914 cost over $5,000, more than twice the price of a Pinto. Still, no one would dream of comparing the two. The 914 was sleek and European. The Pinto was small and American. Until Jack Stratton came along, the man with a wild idea. Jack Stratton wasn't an engineer, he wasn't a factory executive, he was the general sales manager at Huntington Ford in California. But what he lacked in corporate power, he made up for in vision. While other dealers focused on moving metal, Stratton was thinking big. He saw something most others didn't. The Pinto, at just 2,000 pounds, was one of the lightest American cars you could buy. And in the era of rising insurance rates and emissions crackdowns, lightness was a performance advantage. Instead of trying to keep muscle cars alive with bigger engines and bigger problems, Stratton looked in the opposite direction. He imagined a new kind of performance car, light, turbocharged, affordable, and able to outhandle the big names from Europe. And so, the Ford Pinto Pangra was born. Turbocharged transformation. Stratton needed help turning a commuter car into a corner carver. He turned to A.K. Miller, a performance tuning legend who knew more about turbocharging than just about anyone else at the time. Together, they created a turbocharged version of the Pinto's 2.0-liter inline-4, boosting output from a sleepy 90 horsepower to a snarling 175. It wasn't just brute force. They added a water injection system to cool the cylinders, dropped the compression ratio to 7.1 for reliability, and ran a healthy 10 psi of boost. This setup was smart, balanced, and surprisingly advanced for the early 70s. Even more shocking, it passed EPA emissions tests. But power alone wasn't enough. Stratton also wanted the Pinto to handle: suspension and style. To sharpen the Pangra's driving dynamics, the team installed a Spearco suspension kit with heavy-duty sway bars, lowered springs, and custom Coney shocks. The result? A car that could reportedly pull 0.74 G in lateral acceleration, just a tick better than the Porsche 914's 0.73 G. But perhaps the most striking change came in the way the Pangra looked. Fiberglass specialist Bob Crow crafted a completely new front end for the car, stretching it 10 inches longer and sculpting it into a shark-like nose with pop-up headlights. It resembled a Corvette C3 more than a Pinto. Combined with Recaro seats and a custom dash in the dealer-built versions, the Pangra was an unrecognizable beast compared to its factory cousin. Now, the Pangra had the power, it had the handling, it had the looks. All it needed was a chance to prove itself, beating the numbers. On paper, the Pangra stunned critics. It could go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in just 7.5 seconds. The Pangra's 175 horsepower dwarfed the Porsche's 80 to 110, depending on trim. And in terms of price? At around $4,600 fully equipped, the Pangra undercut even the cheapest 914 by hundreds of dollars. A Motor Trend reviewer famously said the Pangra clings like saran wrap, a compliment that put it squarely in the handling league of far pricier machines. Suddenly, the idea of a Pinto outrunning a Porsche wasn't so ridiculous. The dealer option. Stratton offered the Pangra in two ways. You could buy a complete car from Huntington Ford, or you could build your own using dealer-sold kits. The full package came with everything: turbo, suspension, bodywork, custom interior, for about $4,600. But if you were on a budget, you could pick from 3 kit levels. Level 1, a $600 fiberglass nose with pop-up lights. Level 2, suspension upgrades for under $1,000. Level 3, the full turbo powertrain for $1,691. But there was one thing you couldn't get outside the dealership: the custom dashboard. That was exclusive to factory Pangras. In total, it's believed only 20 to 50 complete Pangras were ever sold. Maybe 100 more kits went out to home builders. Rarity was baked into the car's DNA. Track talk. While the Pangra never dominated major races, Pintos, including Pangra variants, did show up in real competition. In IMSA's 2.5 Challenge and Trans Am Baby Grand Series, drivers took on BMWs, Datsuns, Alphas, and yes, even Porsches. Car and driver famously built and raced a Pinto in the IMSA Goodrich Radial Challenge, while Carson Baird captured the 1972 IMSA Baby Grand Championship behind the wheel of a Pinto. These weren't just flukes. Tuned Pintos proved they could compete in the hands of serious drivers. The Pangra, with its upgrades, only enhanced that potential. But despite the performance, it never caught on. Why the Pangra was forgotten. The Ford Pinto Pangra had everything going for it: performance, design, even price. But it couldn't outrun the dark cloud hanging over the Pinto name. By the mid-1970s, the Pinto had become a national punchline. Rear-end explosion lawsuits dominated headlines. Unsafe at any speed may have been coined for the Corvair, but the Pinto became the new scapegoat for automotive danger. No matter how fast, agile, or advanced the Pangra was, it couldn't escape the stigma. Add to that the tiny production numbers and the lack of mass marketing, and the Pangra quietly disappeared from the scene, just a blip in Ford's vast history. An underdog's legacy. Today, the Pinto Pangra is a ghost from another era. A few survive, mostly in private collections or rare car shows. But for those who know the story, it remains one of the most fascinating what-ifs in American car culture. What if Ford had leaned into this vision? What if more people had looked past the badge and seen the potential? What if a Pinto really had become the Porsche killer it nearly was? In the end, the Pangra stands as a symbol of what can happen when creativity meets courage. It's proof that performance doesn't have to come from pedigree, and that sometimes the underdog really does have its day. Let us know in the comments, had you ever heard of the Pinto Pangra before? Would you take one over a classic 914? If you enjoyed this story, hit like, subscribe, and share it with a fellow car enthusiast. We've got more forgotten legends coming your way. Until next time, keep the wheels turning and the stories alive.